This presentation on the educational theories of Albert Bandura and Ross Thompson has been produced as part of the EDUC 5410 Child Development course. This presentation is a group effort by Corlette, Simpson-Robinson, Jackson Moores, Evans Kimani, Gregory Hill, Neill Kapp, and Monica Hakoola, in which roles have been allocated via group discussion and collaboration. The file you are now viewing is the result of that collective effort. This presentation is an analytical overview and personal opinion piece on two educational developmental theorists, Albert Bandura and Ross Thompson. Albert Bandura is a key figure in the latter half of 20th century psychology for his formation and development of social learning theory. In his social learning theory, Bandura agrees with the behaviorist learning theories of classical and operant conditioning. However, he adds two important ideas. Mediating processes occur between stimuli and responses, and behavior is learned from the environment through the process of observational learning. Behavioral conditioning is understood to occur within and be influenced by the social context of learners. Ross Thompson is a professor of psychology at the University of California, Davis, whose work focuses on social and personality development throughout childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. His approach attempts to account for social, biological, and representational factors as the categories that comprise a whole learner. This constructivist understanding illustrates how different stages and types of development are related to one another, and how by looking at multiple variables, we're able to imagine a more complete picture of any learner. In social learning theory, children observe the people around them behaving in various ways. This is illustrated during the famous Bobo doll experiment of 1961. The social learning approach takes thought processes into account and acknowledges the role that they play in deciding if a behavior is to be imitated or not. Describing behavior solely in terms of either nature or nurture underestimates the complexity of human behavior. It is more likely that behavior is due to an interaction between nature, biology, and nurture, the environment. Social learning theory does not attempt to give a full explanation for all behavior. It is, most importantly, a model for how learners process their diverse environmental experiences to develop a sense of agency in their thinking and actions. Bandura's social learning theory is noteworthy for clarifying how observations and instruction create the social bridge for the observable learning emphasized by earlier behavioral theorists. This insight admirably builds nuance and internal thinking processes onto the external reward-punishment frameworks of previous thinkers. Critics suggest, however, that aggression is more complex than social learning theory would have us believe. This emotional and social response is cited as one of the many factors that can impact knowledge and learning, for which Bandura does not clearly account. In the agentic socio-cognitive view, people are self-organized, proactive, self-reflecting, and self-regulating, not just reactive organisms shaped and shepherded by external events. Bandura, 1999, page 2. This perspective shows Bandura's respect for the agency and cognitive abilities of every learner by highlighting that human behavior is more than just reactions driven by external factors. Bandura argues that a key assumption of social cognitive theory is that people desire to control the events that affect their lives and to perceive themselves as agents. This sense of agency manifests itself in intentional acts as cognitive processes and affective processes, as cited by Shunk, 2012, page 122. In a 1994 article titled Self-Efficacy, Bandura said, "Seeing people similar to oneself succeed by sustained effort raises observers' belief that they too possess the capabilities to master comparable activities required to succeed." Bandura, 1994. This quotation highlights Bandura's belief in the role of social influence on building a subject's agentic sense of self. Bandura's theories help us understand the internal thought processes that shape motivation and observable behaviors. His arguments are important for teachers of all age levels because they highlight the social and personal needs of learners to interact with content that support a sense of agency and success. His findings also help strategize for scaffolding content and skills that are appropriate for the developmental stages of learners. Bandura's ideas support teachers in the development of clear classroom management and instructional strategies. focus on observational learning, which employs actions and modeled behaviors as part of curricula, for example, takes advantage of students' abilities to learn by watching others. In young learners, this could take the form of repetition games such as Simon Says to model skills or present content. The behavioral goals of classroom management strategies are similarly supported by taking advantage of students' desires to feel self-sufficient as a means of maintaining focus and motivation. For adolescent students, this could mean instructional opportunities to work with peers in planning and completing complex projects. Ross Thompson's developmental model, in contrast, places more emphasis on the internal and biological experiences of learners as they grow and change. His approach argues that any profile of learning must recognize the relationships between multiple processes that are occurring at the same time in the subject. By valuing an illustration of development that draws connections between cognitive, physical, and emotional experiences, Thompson presents learners as more than things which act and behave. This highlights the unique personhood of any subject and brings the ethical considerations of instruction and content to the forefront of any discussion on education. Thompson's model of social and personality development effectively synthesizes the work of theorists in cognitive and behavioral psychology, developmental biology, and education to paint a picture of the relationship between the forces that guide learners' development. This is admirable for the wide applicability it offers teachers and researchers. The very broadness of the theory is one of its biggest weaknesses, too, however, because it encompasses so many diverse variables in describing the social and personality development of any subject. Struggles to learn and non-standard behavior are difficult to trace back to any particular factor, making interventions for specific learners challenging to plan and organize. The idea that every stage of development relies on the earlier stages demonstrates Thompson's respect for how unique circumstances of every individual impacts them. Factors like attachment styles formed early in an infant's life, for example, will shape later social development, cognitive curiosity, and behaviors. Thompson's approach highlights how balancing diverse needs at each stage of a learner's development is critical for optimal development, and thus that the best settings are those that account for and manage the holistic learner. Social and personality development is best understood as the cognitive interaction between social, biological, and representational aspects of psychological development. Thompson, 2003, paragraph 8. This quotation from Thompson's essay, Social and Personality Development in Childhood, is an example of his attempt to synthesize a range of dynamic factors in creating a model for learner behaviors. Thompson's approach helps teachers understand the complex interactions between the internal and external factors that shape learners' experiences. His model also expresses the dynamic nature of development as an ongoing process of physical, social, and psychological change even into adulthood. Finally, it provides an account for how enormous developmental leaps between infants and adolescents, for example, can be understood as events happening to one continuous person. Thompson's model suggests that teachers should take into account the social needs, physical development, and cognitive representation abilities of students. Early elementary students may, for example, benefit from using manipulatives that help them practice fine motor control and symbolic reasoning skills at the same time. Older students could have practiced social skills and sequencing with theater-based activities for writing narratives, and middle school students can be supported in their experiences of puberty with biology content that addresses their physical experiences, or with social instruction on strategies for communication and building relationships. Albert Bandura and Ross Thompson started from different psychological perspectives to provide theories of development which expand on their predecessors' ideals. Their work is meaningful as psychological, behavioral, and biological evidence of teaching practices that include scaffolded content, group work, physical engagement, and student choice. Bandura's educational approach can help educators visualize learners' behaviors as products of their environment that are, at the same time, responsible for shaping that environment. It explains how external experiences are processed to turn into learning inside a subject. Thompson's model illustrates how social and personality development are constructed with the materials of the various contributing factors on the foundations of earlier stages of development. It highlights the reciprocal nature of many aspects of growth and change. Bandura can be seen as a forerunner of modern perspectives in human psychology. His earlier work on self-efficacy and self-directedness laid the foundations for contemporary conversations about personal agency. He is understood as a revolutionary in psychology, having secured his place as a theorist by dispelling long-held behaviorist assumptions using his famous Bobo doll experiments, which confirmed that not all behavior is directed by reinforcement or rewards. Finally, Bandura's agentic perspective highlights the importance of a sense of agency at all levels of behavior and learning. Thompson's social and personality development theory emphasizes the connected variables that make up all learners. This holistic understanding of the cognitive and contextual factors of development helps to create a theory that adapts to the different needs and experiences of learners at all stages of life. His model provides a constructive take on the processes of change over time, which can, in turn, support educators as they create profiles to most effectively address the needs of diverse student populations. In short, the works of Albert Bandura extends our basic understanding of behaviorism to include the impacts of social inputs on the learner's sense of agency, and Ross Thompson's theories are helpful for building connections between the variables that shape learners at any stage of development. Both offer something valuable to teachers planning lessons and assessments that are most effective for their students. This presentation draws from the following sources for content on the theories and practices of Bandura and Thompson. The opinions expressed in terms of the application of each researcher's theories for classroom teachers belong to the presentation creators. All images contained have been used in accordance with the Google Slides and Creative Commons Fair Use licensing conditions. Thank you.